El Salvador is a member of the United Nations and several of its specialized agencies, the Organization of American States, the Central American Common Market, the Central American Parliament, and the Central American Integration System. It actively participates in the Central American Security Commission, which seeks to promote regional arms control. El Salvador also is a member of the World Trade Organization and is pursuing regional free trade agreements. An active participant in the Summit of the Americas process, El Salvador chairs a working group on market access under the Free Trade Area of the Americas initiative. El Salvador has joined its 6 Central American neighbors in signing the Alliance for Sustainable Development, known as the Conjunta Centroamerica USA or CONCA USA, to promote sustainable economic development in the region. Bilateral relations. Republic of China. El Salvador maintains official diplomatic relations with the Republic of China instead of the People's Republic of China. President Salvador Sanchez Cerén in his campaign reaffirmed that he will not restrict and will not break its diplomatic ties with Taiwan. On the visit of President Ma Ying-jeou to El Salvador, Sanchez Cerén described Ma's visit as evidence of the consolidation of the long-period official diplomatic relations between El Salvador and Taiwan, and both nations signed a joint communiqué in which they recognized that both nations and its peoples respect the fundamental human rights. Sanchez Cerén announced that El Salvador will strengthen its official diplomatic relations with Taiwan. Sanchez Cerén said that President Ma's visit represents the consolidation of a long and fruitful diplomatic relations, friendship and cooperation, which has experienced through the years an intense process of rapprochement, of which the most vulnerable sectors of our society have been most favored. It also means the consolidation of shared vision of brotherhood between two peoples promoters of peace, solidarity and respect for fundamental human rights. President Ma arrives in our country in a very important moment, because we are starting a presidential run has among its major commitments to strengthen the social and economic transformations that need to El Salvador, which will enable present and future generations enjoy a renovated country more just, equitable and broad opportunities, Cerén said to the press after concluding a working meeting with the Asian dignitary. It has good foreign relationships. Cuba and El Salvador have resumed diplomatic relations on June 1, 2009. El Salvador previously suspended diplomatic relations with Cuba in 1961 due to the Cuban Revolution. The diplomatic ties have started after El Salvador's new president Mauricio Funes has been sworn into office, and pledged to re-establish diplomatic relations with Cuba. El Salvador is also the very last Latin American nation to do so. Honduras. In July 1969, El Salvador and Honduras fought the 100-hour football war over disputed border areas and friction resulting from the 300,000 Salvadorans who had emigrated to Honduras in search of land and employment. The catalyst was nationalistic feelings aroused by a series of soccer matches between the two countries. The two countries formally signed a peace treaty on October 30, 1980, which put the border dispute before the International Court of Justice. In September 1992, the court issued a 400-page ruling, awarding much of the disputed land to Honduras, although there have been tensions between citizens on both sides of the border. The two countries have worked to maintain stability and signed an agreement in November 1996 to establish a framework for negotiating the final disposition of citizens and property in the affected areas. El Salvador and Honduras share normal diplomatic and trade relations. The Honduras-El Salvador Border Protocol, ratified by Honduras in May 1999, established a framework for a long-delayed border demarcation, which is currently underway, with respect to the maritime boundary in the Golfo de Fonseca. The International Court of Justice referred to the line determined by the 1900 Honduras-Nicaragua Mixed Boundary Commission and advised that some tripartite resolution among El Salvador, Honduras and Nicaragua likely would be required. India has an honorary consulate in San Salvador. El Salvador maintains an embassy in New Delhi and consulate in Bangalore, Kolkata and Mumbai. Kosovo. El Salvador officially recognized Kosovo as an independent sovereign state on 29 June 2013. El Salvador and Kosovo established official diplomatic relations on 18 October 2014. Mexico. Diplomatic relations between Mexico and El Salvador were established in 1838. Mexico has an embassy in San Salvador. El Salvador has an embassy in Mexico City and consulates general in Monterrey, Tapachula and Veracruz City. Both countries are members of the Organization of American States and the Organization of Ibero-American States. Palestine. El Salvador, which is home to a sizable ethnic Palestinian community, was widely expected to join the succession of South American governments that recognized Palestine in the end of 2010. In May 2011, members of the country's legislative assembly, including its president Sigfrido Reyes, presented a proposal to the cabinet to issue a statement formally recognizing the State of Palestine. The Central American Integration System was expected to adopt a coordinated position on the issue at its summit in San Salvador on 18 August. However, El Salvador, as the nation presiding over the summit, refused to include the matter on the official agenda, insisting that discussion should retain a regional focus. Despite this, the government officially recognized the Palestinian state on 25 August. This recognition notably took place at a time when there was no Israeli ambassador present, since Ambassador Matanya Cohen had left his post after the end of his 4-year term. Russia. El Salvador established diplomatic relation with Russia in 1992 after the end of the Salvadoran Civil War and after the end of the Cold War. Russian Federation Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited El Salvador, and since then legislative visits of legislative, even from anti-narcotics cooperation, have been accomplished. El Salvador has benefited with the selling of Russian tractors and Russian vans. Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. El Salvador recognized the SADA on July 31, 1989. On April 1997, El Salvador cancelled relations with the SADA. On June 2009, and during a visit of SADR's President Mohamed Abdelaziz, relations were restored. On November 30, 2010, the SADA in El Salvador upgraded the relations to ambassadorial level. South Korea. The establishment of diplomatic relations between South Korea and El Salvador began on August 1962, and the number of the South Koreans living in El Salvador in 2013 was 258. Spain. El Salvador has an embassy in Madrid and a consulate general in Barcelona. Spain has an embassy in San Salvador. United States U.S. policy towards the country promotes the strengthening of El Salvador's democratic institutions, rule of law, judicial reform, and civilian police, national reconciliation and reconstruction, and economic opportunity and growth. El Salvador has been a committed member of the Coalition of Nations fighting against terrorism and has sent 10 rotations of troops to support the Iraq War. This article incorporates public domain material from websites or documents of the United States Department of State. El Salvador has an embassy in Washington, D.C. and has several consulates general scattered about the country. United States has an embassy in San Salvador. The embassy in hand is considered to be one of the biggest American embassies in the world.